A new report reveals Representative Jasmine Crockett may not have been entirely truthful about her stock portfolio. New York Democratic mayor candidate Zohran Mamdani is caught lying about Islamophobia he claims his aunt faced after 9/11, and Democrats struggle under the weight of a public displeased with the shutdown. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin joins us for more. I'm Tony Kinnett, host of the Daily Signal's Tony Kinnett Cast, syndicated nationally at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. This is the Daily Signal's top news in 10. Yesterday, a report at the Washington Free Beacon by Andrew Kerr revealed that Representative Jasmine Crockett, Democrat of Texas, owned stocks in at least 25 different companies that she did not disclose to the public during her first congressional run in 2022, even though she had previously quietly admitted to the holdings the previous year as a Texas state legislator. Crockett also had not revealed the stock holdings once she got to Washington, D.C. in 2023. The rather impressive portfolio contained a number of shares in Amazon, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, General Motors, Uber, DuPont Chemical, ExxonMobil, American Airlines, AT&T, Aurora Cannabis, Ford, and corporate cannabis and stocks worldwide. Candidates for Congress are required to file a very detailed financial disclosure statement, and if victorious, they must file additional disclosure statements and especially label anything that gets close to over $1,000 in value. Additional criticism that Jasmine Crockett has received since this report centers around her criticism of members of the Republican Party for perhaps not exactly honest dealing regarding the stock market on the other side of the aisle. Here she is complaining about Marjorie Taylor Greene earlier this year.
Let's look at fraud. We could investigate whether the White House and the members of this subcommittee engaged in insider trading and market manipulation. Maybe it's a coincidence that the chairwoman brought hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stock the day before Trump announced a 90-day pause on tariffs. But I guess we'll never know.
Additionally, Crockett, a described eco-warrior concerned about the environment and against big capitalism, holding shares in Amazon, in DuPont Chemical, ExxonMobil, the oil company, American Airlines, a company known for producing, let's say, quite a bit of CO2 due to its commercial airline service, and other organizations that are not exactly the most eco-friendly have drawn hypocrisy criticisms. But alas, that's not necessarily stopped any member of the House before. In other lying and getting caught news, Zoran Mamdani has been caught changing the story as to whether or not his aunt, who he had claimed had been the subject of Islamophobia after the September 11th, 2001 terror attack in New York City, may not entirely be truthful. Here was Zoran Mamdani a few days ago claiming that his aunt was uncomfortable and no longer able to ride the New York City subway in her burqa on September 12th.
I want to speak to the memory of my aunt. Who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
There are just a few issues with this. According to several investigative reports, the aunt that Zoran appeared to be describing lived in Tanzania at the time and wasn't even wearing a burqa. Zoran has since gone back on this particular statement by claiming instead it was actually a cousin of his father and she passed away a number of years ago, so you can't ask her if any of this is true.
I was speaking about my aunt. I was speaking about Zohran, my father's cousin, who sadly passed away a few years ago. And for the takeaway from my more than 10-minute address about Islamophobia in this race and in this city to be the question of my aunt tells you everything about Andrew Cuomo and his inability to reckon with a crisis of his own.
And lastly, Democrats continue to struggle under the weight of a public rather displeased with the shutdown and Democrats' role in it. Here's MSNBC claiming that Democrats aren't brushing this one off.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very dramatic call from that union of federal employees representing hundreds of thousands with a statement today saying, among other things, that it's time for our leaders to start focusing on how to solve problems for the American people rather than on who is going to get the blame for a shutdown that Americans dislike. Because when the folks who serve this country are standing in line for food banks after missing a second paycheck because of this shutdown, they aren't looking for partisan spin. They're looking for wages that they earned. They go on to essentially say that Congress needs to pass, in their view, a clean CR. Now, when Speaker Mike Johnson was asked about this today, he certainly kind of leaned into this. In fact, we saw several top Republicans on the House side take advantage of this statement and basically point to it, saying, Democrats, the ball is in your court now, whether or not you decide to act on this. Johnson saying, I certainly hope this is a turning point in the shutdown, noting that this is a union, after all, that is weighing in this sort of way, and saying that this shutdown is a charade. Now, of course, at the same time, I have in recent weeks spoken to Democrats representing districts with heavy populations of federal employees, and their message that they say they've been receiving from federal workers was keep up the fight, that health care is the fight worth having, that it is an important time to push back on the Trump administration. Of course, as this continues to drag out, as we see federal employees now missing paychecks, will that start to change? We shall see this week when lawmakers start to return. The Senate comes in this afternoon. They're expected at some point this week to vote again on that CR to reopen the government. And members of the House Democratic Caucus are going to be here as well, so we'll be polling them too.
Senator Ron Johnson, Republican senator of Wisconsin, joins us for more on this rather interesting series of votes and shutdown shenanigans. We head over to the great Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, joining us again here to talk a little bit about the 543rd time Democrats are passing on the opportunity to pass a bill just to pay government shutdown workers in the meantime. I got to tell you, I'm a little surprised at this one. You're not surprised. You never seem to be surprised. Tell us the situation on the ground there in D.C., sir.
Well, Tony, hope you're doing well, but you're embellishing. It's only been a dozen times that they've voted down the House CR. But yeah, last Thursday, I went to the floor to ask them to just vote cloture on a bill that would pay the people that we're forcing to work. And Chris Van Hollen came to the floor and did a unanimous consent request on what he called the True Shutdown Fairness Act. Mine was called the Shutdown Fairness Act. And really the only difference is he would just do it temporarily. He would include furloughed workers, which I said, really, from my standpoint, they're going to get paid anyway because we have the 2019 Government Fair Treatment Act. So, I mean, I would go ahead and include, I can't speak for the entire conference, but I would include the furloughed workers. And, that was really the only difference. I mean, he misrepresented the fact that said my bill gave the president great authority to fire people. It doesn't. It just, follows the Anti-Deficiency Act. So again, there's very, very narrow differences. We tried to work it out over the weekend, I'm not getting a yes from them. But they've won the negotiation. I threw in furloughed workers. I hope Leader Thune decides to bring that back up for another vote. He switched his vote to no, so he can bring it up for reconsideration. If we don't do that, the real fix here would be the Eliminate Shutdown Act, which just establishes rolling 14-day continuing appropriations until you fund that particular department. Even some of our appropriators voted no because the explanation was what undercuts the appropriation process. But let me describe that process that it's undercutting. I've been here 15 years. Should have passed 180 appropriation bills before the end of the fiscal year to fund the next year. We've passed 6. So it's a 96.7% failure rate, and my Eliminate Shutdowns Act is supposed to undermine that process. By the way, nothing could be further from the truth. It just would allow the appropriators to, prior to the fiscal year, if they can find agreement, go past that. And rather than spend a month fighting over shutdown, we could have been passing individual appropriation bills.
Okay.
Committee, get him to the floor. Let's do it the right way. Get him to the floor. Vote for cloture. File amendments. If you don't like the bill, don't vote for it at the very end.
Okay, all right, that's fair. And it sounds like that might actually fix things, but then how would you get Cory Booker walking around in circles and sticking his chin out and his eyes all bugging out and yelling? And I guess I should say, or at least I think you would know these senators a lot better than I am. When you have the Cory Bookers on one side, the John Fetterman's on the other, Cortez Masto, you've got Ossoff and Warnock voting in favor of some measures. It seems like some Democrats on the moderate side are starting to slip away and fracture. Is there anyone else you think that might be a little close to breaking away and voting with the Republicans to end the shutdown?
We've got a number of senators that are retiring. Gene Shaheen, Gary Peters, they'd be what you'd term more the reasonable Democrats. But until they all vote together, it is a concern. Leadership's expressed this. I mean, if we keep doing these things and we give two or three of them a chance to vote for something, so, well, I voted to pay people, but they continue to keep the government shut down. I mean, you're kind of giving them a free vote and don't necessarily, politically, don't necessarily want to do that as well. So that's why I would just keep bringing up the Shutdown Fairness Act. Now, we've walked the extra mile.
To catch the rest of that interview, make sure to head down to the description below. We'll have that linked. Speaking of, make sure you're subscribed to the Tony Kinnett Cast. You can find a link for that as well down in the description. And join us tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern for a roundup of the day's news and nonsense. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this has been the Daily Signal's Top News in 10. Take care.